What myth did a company invent to sell their products? The inventors of OxyContin tried to convince the public that it was a addictive-free version of oxycodone. They blatantly lied and were sued for like $500 a while back. It's probably an urban legend, as I can't find a source for it online, but I remember reading about a company that sold canned tuna advertising its product as being guaranteed not to turn black in the can. Of course, tuna would never turn black in the can, but by saying it won't, it implied that competing brands did sell tuna that turned black in the can. Super late to the game, but Ivory soap. So pure it floats. They whip air into the mixture. It has nothing to do with purity. Alka-Seltzer increased sales by changing the recommended dose to 2 tablets instead of 1. The famous plop, fizz marketing campaign was only to increase sales, not based on real medical advice. A counterexample, Wonder Bread was widely mocked for their slogan "Build strong bodies 12 ways," since it was just white bread with some added artificial vitamins. As natural foods became more popular, that was regarded as an advertising myth. However, during the Depression, Wonder Bread prevented pellagra and other vitamin deficiencies among alcoholics who had poor diets but did eat white bread and saved tens of thousands of lives in the process. That your teeth are supposed to be #FFFFFF white. Nutella told people their products were a healthy alternative. In 2011 I received a notice that I might be eligible as a member of a class action lawsuit because of Nutella's "healthy alternative" advertising. I filled out the card saying that yes, I had purchased 3 Nutella jars in my region between X and X date and mailed it in. 3 years later I received a $12 check in the mail with a letter saying this was my settlement. I deposited the check and bought $12 of Nutella to celebrate. That beer will spoil if it goes from cold to hot. Kohl's started this because they had refrigerated trucks and pushed that always cold thing. In reality, most beer is going from cold to hot multiple times while being shipped out. The real enemy of beer is light and time. Skechers shape ups media as more tone and bigger. Mentioning J.D. Power Awards in an ad means something to you as a consumer. I hear soda companies switched from glass to plastic as a cost-saving measure, claiming they were more convenient as you can just throw them away, rather than bringing the bottles back for cleaning and refilling. They then blamed consumers for all the additional plastic trash. Diamonds are forever. Diamonds are a girl's best friend. 2 months' salary. My grandpa used to tell me the story of how he was friends with the guy who created the beverage Talking Rain. The sparkling water became very popular in the 90s and came in a bottle with a story of how the native people of the area found a bubbling spring that seemed to talk as rain fell into it or something. This magical water became the source for Talking Rain. But that was all, of course, just a lie the guy made up to sell carbonated tap water to idiots. That my sea monkeys were going to be my new friends. If it makes you feel better, their creator was a Klansman. Adding, since I was at work and didn't think it would spur a conversation. The sea monkeys were actually brine shrimp and the brainchild of Harold von Braunert, who made a living in mail order novelties, namely X-ray glasses. He got the idea after the success of ant farms and decided to make use of brine shrimp, which had been used as fish food. The shrimp had already adapted cryptobiosis, the ability to dry out and later be rehydrated back to life. Von Braunert worked with Drive Anthony D'Agostino, a marine biologist, to develop the powder they would come in that would give them the nutrients and salt they'd need in their water. The trick was actually pretty clever on von Braunert's part. Supposedly there were 2 packets. The first would prepare the water, and the second contained the sea monkeys, which would come to life instantly and would be added 24 hours after the first. In reality, the first packet contained the water prep and the live shrimp. The second packet, blue dye, that would make the already rehydrated and grown shrimp visible. Von Braunert was Jewish, but supported his local KKK and attended Aryan Nations conferences. He's been quoted for several racist views I won't repeat here. The Disney Vault. Lol. I remember during the pre-streaming days of how big a deal Disney made about pulling stuff out of their vault for the last time, making a VHS of Dumbo available for a single Christmas season at $29.99. Even then, people had to know that Disney would sell it as long as people bought it. The slogan "More doctors smoke camels," implying that camel cigarettes were some sort of healthy cigarette recommended by doctors. Clover used to be an intentional part of the American lawn prior to WW2. It thrives in poor soil, fixes its own nitrogen, and can survive drought conditions, and was deliberately added to assist with the growth of the surrounding grass. Once weed killer came to market post WW2, it wasn't long before chemical companies successfully rebranded clover as a weed. Clover is a broadleaf plant and was unintentionally killed alongside the other unfavorable weeds, so it was successfully removed from the picturesque perfect American lawn by chemical companies. Kerrygold butter originally was just a standard butter that happened to be made in Ireland. They released a marketing campaign about how you shouldn't cook with Kerrygold because it was a fancier high quality butter. It ended up working, and international sales skyrocketed. So they used the money to actually improve their product so that it would be as it is today, a fancier high quality butter. All cosmetics company claiming male and female need a different soap shampoo as a. Lately some even tried to apply the gendered marketing to yogurt, toothpaste, handkerchief, or pens. Rinse and repeat on shampoo bottles was designed to sell more shampoo. Dockers invented business casual to sell more khaki slacks and help get men out of wearing suits to work as much. That vitamin water is healthy. So, I don't know if anybody knows this. Big tobacco companies have their hand in more than just cigs causing cancer. The reason horrible cancer-causing flame retardants existed in almost all foam inside furniture for decades was because of these companies. In the 1970s, the government was trying to force big tobacco to make the self-extinguishing cigarette because it was the main cause of household fires at the time. People falling asleep with a cig in their hand. You get the picture. Well, big tobacco made a bunch of shittily conducted research, as well as spread propaganda for years, that it wasn't the cig, which they didn't want to change at all, but that furniture is poorly insulated and catches fire easily. So, skip to about 1990, and people start realizing all these carcinogens are in breast milk, and huge ppm counts of bad shit in humans, caused mainly by people living with this degrading flame retardant coated foam. Firefighters' cancer rates also skyrocketed because of this. Smoke death due to the fire retardant burning also spiked. It took something like 10 years or so for a sheetload of lawyers and legislators to finally get the law changed in California, the last state requiring flame retardant coated foam, and even then it's still being battled because the chemical companies that sold the flame retardant make so much money off it. It's a much deeper and richer story, but I don't wanna go that far. TL. Doctor, the reason carcinogenic chemicals existed in all foam padded furniture was that big tobacco didn't want to admit that cigarettes cause fires. Water memory to sell homeopathy products. The colorful flowers in your yard are actually terrible weeds. Spray toxic chemicals on your property weekly. Women love the smell of an entire can of Axe body spray, which was believed by every teenage boy for years. Literally any company that claims detoxifying properties. What toxins? Spinach is not especially high in iron. The story goes that way back in 1870 a researcher made a mistake with a decimal point and accidentally credited spinach with 10 times the iron content it actually had. The mistake was corrected relatively quickly, but to this day spinach producers still like to push the product based on its iron content, despite the fact that if you compare the actual number, spinach is middle of the road among leafy greens on iron. Low fat products, which we were told was good for you because fat is bad, turned out it was bullshit, because the low fat products had more sugar in it to compensate for taste. More sugar carbs is a real cause of many diseases we have. I believe it was Lysol that created the myth that vaginas aren't self-cleaning and you need to wash them out, otherwise your husband will leave you, or whatever. Seriously, look up some of the old ads. It's absolutely bananas the type of stuff they were claiming. Not only unnecessary, but extremely detrimental health-wise. And a lot of people still believe that shit. Edit, for the people who apparently never learned this in health class. Vagina equals internal, vulva equals external. It's generally fine to wash your vulva with a mild non-scented soap, but no soap or other cleaning products should ever go near your vagina, or you risk major irritation and infection. So when you're saying you prefer that women wash the vagina, you either are referring to the wrong thing, or are advocating something that from a health perspective, is a horrible, terrible, no good, very bad idea. That oranges are loaded with vitamin C. There's more vitamin C in a bell pepper than in an orange. I just read about this in a book a couple months ago. The man who invented toothpaste deliberately put in mint and other flavors along with a chemical that causes your gums to tingle, so that when you wake up in the morning you crave the mint and the tingling feeling on your gums. That is why your mouth feels atrocious if you do not brush every morning. Not a myth per se, but they sold a product that perpetuated itself forward as people used it more and more. Feminine hygiene products, like Lysol, convincing women for decades that their vagina smelled bad unless they used their products. They made posters with the sad husbands who leave their wife because she smells. The products themselves were unhealthy and caused more problems than they pretended to solve. The tradition of diamond engagement rings by the De Beers Company. Not a myth, but after PBR's sales slipped from the 80s to the early 2000s, they sent cool, likable, hipster-esque people into clubs. Once there, they would befriend a few people and buy them a drink, which was always PBR. Of course, the people who were on the receiving end of the drinks didn't want PBR, as it was barely popular among its aging rural audience, let alone young hipsters. But the marketer always assured his new friends that Hesh was drinking it ironically. So, the friends Hesh made would go along with it. Sure enough, the trend of drinking PBR ironically soared, and as of 2013 its sales were more than 200% higher than they were in 2004. It should be noted that Pabst portrayed itself to be a hipster drink in many other ways that helped boost sales, but I thought this was an enjoyable highlight from their rebranding campaign. The entire platform of Baby Einstein. Highly expensive short digital cables such as HDMI will make your music sound better. It's literally just ones and zeros being transmitted, so if there is a loss of data transmission in audio you will get a dropout. You cannot hear the difference between a $5 and $200 HDMI cable. Long cables on the other hand do need to be high quality or else they will break more easily, especially in the AV industry, where cables are being connected and disconnected multiple times a day, although a lot of companies now use fiber or HDSDI for cabling. You don't need a $200 plus 1 meter HDMI cable. A $5 HDMI cable will do the trick if it's being plugged in once and left. In general, a lot of the audiophile industry is built on myths, especially the example I mentioned above. Amps, speakers, processors etc. are not a myth, as quality products will last longer and sound better, but a lot of it is to sell you more expensive products. Kellogg's basically inventing a food pyramid to convince the public to eat their garbage for breakfast. That shitty myth persisted for decades. Those Cray balance bracelet things. I remember seeing those things probably close to 20 years ago. My dad bought it. It's just a FKN bracelet. People are so gullible. Basically like those chakra crystals or super hydro water BS. Razor companies ran ad campaigns to get the public to see women's leg and underarm hair as unhygienic and gross, so they could sell razors to women too. Now it's so deeply ingrained in our culture I cannot imagine it ever having been normal for women to have leg hair. Dark colored diamonds were once gems that were basically thrown away by mining companies. They were not as shiny and enticed to customers as the light colored diamonds. At some point a company came up with the idea to rebrand these cheap, crappy diamonds as something desirable. Suddenly these muddy chocolate diamonds were born, and they have since grown into a huge hit. Jewelry companies now make a ton of money from once worthless diamonds. Not a single company as far as I know, but the myth that breakfast is the most important meal of the day. Prior to this, people generally had something small like a piece of toast, if anything. Jaywalking was invented by auto manufacturers. Before then, people walked, talked, and played in the street. It was a public living space, coopted by vehicles.